This little cartridge contains one of the most confusing pieces of media I have ever consumed. It's a video game that I would describe as fundamentally flawed and, well, arguably horrendous, while I, in the same breath, wouldn't hesitate to call it almost flawless. This is Deadly Premonition 2. It's one of the worst games I've ever played, and it's probably my favorite game of all time.
Never a choice when somebody needs you, you can't turn away. You're their only lifeline, just a hero, a bullet for hire, working alone.
Nintendo has gotten pretty good at making consoles. I mean, you'd assume as much, wouldn't you? They've been doing it for the better part of 5 decades.
Starting all the way back in 1977 with the Japanese-only imaginatively named color TV game, and leading the way all throughout the rest of the 20th century, despite its ups and downs, always seemingly ending up beating out the competition in one way or another, finally ending up here in 2022. Or in 2017. They haven't really made anything new since 2017.
Making consoles is apparently not a tall task. Well, for them, I mean, obviously. I wouldn't know where to start. I've never tried, though.
I vividly remember having a family NES growing up, icing a hockey team full of the fattest of fat guys and screaming as I lost to my mom's quick and balanced US squad. But the point I fell in love with video games didn't come until my very own PlayStation 2. Jack, Ratchet, Sly, these were my childhood to a very large extent, so the Nintendo ecosystem was always kind of foreign to me. But even I, at the time, knew that there was one thing that the GameCube, Nintendo DS, and later the Wii had in common. Whether true or just a rumor, they were comparatively underpowered.
This design principle didn't stop with the Wii, however, as the massive flop that was the Wii U and the meteoric success of the Switch still follows the same design principle. Try to fit in the minimum amount of teraflops per dollar. This is me trying to sound smart. I don't know what a teraflop is. Look at me. Do I look like I... Look, what the point I'm making is that the Switch is underpowered, like very underpowered. Like this is my old iPhone XS or something, and I'm pretty sure this thing is boatloads faster than the Switch. That's the point I'm making. This is an issue, mind you, when Nintendo are the only ones making the games like they were for the Wii U. I mean, look at Mario Kart 8. Shit looks like a damn dream, and it plays even dreamier. Now, the issue comes when your consoles start selling like goddamn hotcakes, and other companies want a piece of that pie. Or cake, I guess.
Take a little hidden gem by the name of Witcher 3.
Does anyone even remember this?
A game developed by, at the time, probably the most loved studio in the world, with accolades rivaled by few others, CD Projekt Red. This is Witcher 3 on a PC. And this is Witcher 3 on Switch. Now, don't get me wrong, it's very impressive that they even got it on here in the first place, given the power differences. But you can't disagree with the fact that there is a difference, right?
Now, my point isn't that the Witcher port is a bad game. It's blurry, low frame rate, and filled with pop-in, but it's on the Switch. No, the point I'm making is that if this is the best that one of the biggest studios in the world can come up with, then I just think it's funny that when a certain renowned developer wanted to create the next installment in a cult classic series, his first and only choice of platform was just that, the Switch. Hidetaka Suehiro, or Swery65 as he's maybe more commonly known. If you're into survival horror or just weird games, these names might ring a bell for you. Eccentric doesn't even feel like it starts to describe the man. He's one of a kind. As are his games.
One game in particular stands out, a certain mentioned cult classic. In 2010, Swery released Deadly Premonition onto the world, a seemingly middle-of-the-road survival horror title featuring a bland-looking detective front and center, but it changed gaming journalism forever. IGN felt confident in their 2 out of 10. It was awful, with terrible controls and terrible pacing, while Destructoid entered the ring touting a flawless 10 out of 10, saying it was pretty close to perfect.
But if there was one thing that they both, and the rest of the gaming community could agree on, was that it was weird. Like very, very weird.
Could you wait?
Just a little longer?
Sure.
This won't take
Nope,
long.
it can take as long as you want. I don't want anything to do with this. Looked at as a game in the same sense that other survival horror titles of the time were, it's hard to see any real upside to the gameplay experience. Resident Evil 4 had already 5 whole years prior revolutionized the genre and was still held as not only the greatest among his peers, but as one of the best video games of all time. So right from the get-go, Deadly Premonition and its terrible controls was fighting an uphill battle. That is until people realized just why Destructor crowned it as flawless. This guy, Francis York Morgan.
Whether your story features a hero or an anti-hero, 99% of the time they fall into one of two categories. One, a character you're able to relate to. Or two, a character you despise so much that you latch on to whoever is fighting them. But that's just the thing with Francis York Morgan. He's both of them. All of the time.
Zach, can you give me a logical explanation about what that was? Never mind, don't answer. Life is fun because of the mysteries. Right, Zach?
That's a great attitude to have as a law enforcement officer. And this, along with the rest of the writing and some incredibly intriguing game design choices, is why Deadly Premonition has cemented itself firmly on every weird game lover's list of the best games of all time. It's special. There's a reason it holds the world record for the most critically divisive survival horror game ever released. The people that didn't get it in the slightest, while the people who got on board set sail completely and raced off into the sunset.
Look, it is weird, strange out there, and in some aspects, inescapably bad. It's one of the dumbest games I have played and replayed countless of times, and I hate it every time. I love it. Perfect might be pushing it a little, but they did say pretty close to.
So what do we get when we combine what we have here? A woefully underpowered console in the Switch, being developed for by a new, inexperienced team in one corner, and in the other, an incredibly eccentric and over-the-top visionary of a game director.
Oh, you get this. You get all of it.
Special Agent Francis York Morgan.
Deadly Premonition 2 was released on the 10th of July 2020, which I get is hard to accept considering... Well, considering...
The game's announcement was unexpected. For years and years, a potential sequel was rumored, but I think that in everyone's collective mind, we all kinda just accepted it never happened. It was just too weird for mainstream success. So when Nintendo just dropped it out of nowhere on one of their directs, it yielded some interesting reactions.
Welcome back to where nothing is what it seems.
Wait, what? Wait, what? New? No, Bill, what? Right into it? What the hell?
Welcome back to where nothing is what it seems.
Sure, why not? Wow, why not?
Sure.
Okay.
2000.
What?
To say he was a surprise is probably the understatement of the century. Because whether you were a fan of the original or not, Deadly Premonition was very much an IP that in most people's minds was dead. Dead and buried.
Between it being announced in April of 2019 and it finally coming out in July of 2020, the world looked a little
Much of
different.
America shutting down.
But it didn't look this different.
All right, let's talk about it. Even if you were previous to this unfamiliar with the original Deadly Premonition, seeing this, I think we all now share one collective thought. This is Deadly Premonition 1. And this is Deadly Premonition 2.
It does look worse, doesn't it?
What? What's going on here? It is kind of unbelievable.
But we've been through this. It's on the Switch. Sure, the predecessor was on the even less powerful Xbox 360, but it's the Switch. It's gonna look a little mobile gamey. That's just how it works. If it runs fine, who cares? Oh. Oh!
This isn't doctored footage. I haven't tinkered around in Premiere or cherry-picked a moment to prove a point here. This is the gold version of Deadly Premonition 2. This is the version they shipped on the cartridge. This is the version we played on release day.
This is a game from 2020. Sorry, I just can't get over that. I love it so much.
Straight from the get-go, fans of the original felt right at home. The writing was as surreal as ever, with insane lines seemingly oozing out of every page. York and his magical companion Zack still having encyclopedic knowledge about every movie ever released, except for the ones that people have actually seen, all while claiming that Arnold Schwarzenegger is, and should always be, referred to as Arnold S.
Whatever, just stop calling him Arnold S, okay? It's irritating me.
Zack, she's at a sensitive age. We both know full well that this is the official way to refer to the film star, but she isn't used to it, so it's bothering her.
On paper, it is the perfect sequel. Another murder has been committed, and just like in the first game, it grows and grows into a way larger, way more complicated situation. Instead of the mystery year of Deadly Premonition 1, it's now 2005. Instead of a car, you get a skateboard, and instead of being set in Washington State, it takes place in the deep south.
It just screams deep south. It feels like we're in all the mysticism tradition of south. This is it. Zack. Lead me in. This world as we don't understand.
Deep South, Deep Schmouth, the game's ass. Let's talk about it. Being set X years before its predecessor, Deadly Premonition 2 is a prequel. Except for the first 2.5 hours. If you played Red Dead Redemption 2, you know that it features a lengthy prologue sequence filled to the brim with gorgeous vistas and crucial character development. Well, this is how Deadly Premonition 2 handles the same idea. It's literally just this. For 2.5 hours, it's literally just for 2.5 hours. When the game finally does decide to go back in time and actually play the role of a prequel, you're instantly reminded as to why you're even here to begin with. York. York is an insane character, but simultaneously one of the most lovable protagonists ever penned. He's the kind of person to be amazed and awestruck of the most mundane things.
It's a voodoo shop.
All the while being completely fine with all the horrifically outlandish things that go on around him.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Speaking of outlandish, you seen this frame rate? To claim that the game chugs is a slight on every college kid out there. The game takes one sip at a time, and during some of the loading times, I'm halfway convinced that it just left its drink on the bar and went home. Anyone else enjoying this gameplay right now, or just me? This frame rate permeates your whole adventure, whether you're speaking to a strange voodoo shop owner, skateboarding around the neighborhood, or trying to take a shower in your very own hotel room. Oh my god, the water pressure, man. Alright, okay, this is a good example of why Deadly Premonition is unlike anything else out there. Let me paint you a picture. You realize that flies are starting to gather around York, so you decide that, even though munching mint gum apparently gets rid of them, it proves logical that a good shower would do so more efficiently. You head to your, for 2005, insanely expensive hotel room and find that allegedly the water pressure is non-existent. No worries, it's a hotel. They have people on staff for just this sort of thing. So you head downstairs to the concierge, who claims that you will need to wait a couple of weeks for an expert to arrive because, and I quote, the hotel's plumbing is built in a very classical way, whatever that means. But you might be able to adjust a certain valve to alleviate the issue, or perhaps the bellboy might know what the issue is. Obviously, the valve does absolutely nothing, so the bellboy it is. Problem is, he's not here. Well, he is here. Kinda. He's just not there. And in any other game, that wouldn't be an issue, right? Just ask him about the water pressure whilst he's standing here instead. Not in Deadly Premonition 2. Right now, he only answers taxi-related questions. You need to wait for a day or two for him to move to his water pressure-associated position before asking him about it. Understandable, surely. No worries, you just run up to your room, go to bed, pay the exorbitant hotel fees, and waste your years away until he unceremoniously shuffles over. Hey, bellboy. How do I fix the water pressure? And when he tells you to adjust another valve or go ask the chef about it, you stare into his very soul and scream into the air. The valve does nothing and the chef is nowhere to be seen. Except he's right there. Problem is, as logic would dictate it, he only answers water pressure related questions on a 45-minute interval on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Back to your room, go to bed, pay the fees, repeat a dozen times, and run back to his fake chef ass only for him to tell you to adjust a third damn valve hidden somewhere in the hotel. Obviously knowing it'll do nothing, you begrudgingly jog over and... That's it? That's the quest? That's it? Maybe understandably, this time the outlets were more in line. They still bickered over if they were getting the overall experience, but they all unanimously panned it for the performance, citing it to be just average and technically rough, with inexcusably poor open world performance, or as Polygon so eloquently put it, the assault to my eyes. They're all right, of course. They're 100% unequivocally correct. Only a madman would argue the opposite. That first Switch version was inexcusable. To call it technically rough is an understatement similar to calling the invention of the wheel a bit neat. And this assault on the eyes would put any military operation to shame. These are all things that the later Switch patches alleviated, and the PC release fixed almost completely. Deadly Premonition 2 in 2022 is a wholly different game to the release one. No, I'm not here to disagree with the journalists. I'm just not so sure the game got better.
This is my mom's house. I've been making a point to spend at least a week or so here every year, no matter where I find myself in the world. It's a place that I long for when times get tough. The place I imagine I'm at when all luck runs out. It's special. There's just something about it. The doors creak, the window panes rattle, and there are spiders absolutely everywhere. Truth be told, it's probably more their house than ours. Yet, given the option, I wouldn't change a single thing about it. There's just something that feels right about this place, just as it is. I don't know if it's because of the memories we share or the immense warmth you're greeted with anytime you arrive or some other intangible thing, but I do know that it feels right. It feels like home. As for the spiders, well, even if my mom would probably disagree with me, it's probably more their house than ours.
And that's just the thing. This silly little Switch game is almost perfect to me. It's ugly beyond belief, the animations are stiffer than any animatronic of your choice, and it runs worse than Crysis does on the same platform, which is... I never really let that line sink in until I read it just now. That's incredible. But to me, all of that is secondary, if even that. It's so far out of the realm of importance that it's completely flipped the scale. I used to be the kind of person to obsess over frame rates, to the obscene. If a game were to drop below 144 FPS for a millisecond, I'd Alt F4 and troubleshoot for the rest of the month. But here, every time it stutters, every time it chugs, every time it freezes and goes home, I just love it more. There's something so pure about the whole experience. There have been countless arguments online as to if this kind of release was intentional, if it's a design choice, something that helps the narrative of the game. I don't know, and I don't think it matters. I think it's missing the point. Swery is one of the most eccentric people making interactive experiences today. A more passionate creator is close to impossible to find. It's so clear that Swery loves Deadly Premonition and its characters. One only needs to look at any form of marketing material to understand that. He treats these figments of his mind as his very own children, and that is what I believe makes Deadly Premonition 2 work so well. This unwavering commitment to seeing this through, come hell or high water, come glitch or low frame rate. It's woefully clear that the team behind Deadly Premonition 2 didn't have all the resources they needed, whether time or technical expertise, and in a complete objective vacuum devoid of any emotion, this would have hurt the experience, just like it did countless games before it. But here it makes you relate to this group of ragtag developers scrounging together anything they can to fit this game, this thing of their dreams, onto this tiny little cartridge. Here, it makes you love it more.
There is one element of Deadly Premonition 2 that isn't as haha funny as the rest of the game, however. Previously, in the later half of the game, protagonist York acted out of character, misgendered, and later dead-named a trans woman. This was something that was addressed in the very first patch of the game, with the development team and Swery himself apologizing profusely, claiming it to be a mistake. This felt out of character, both for the character of York, who is shown to be a great ally of trans people, and the greater LGBTQIA+ movement on multiple other occasions throughout the game, alongside Swery himself with his previous work The Missing, having received critical acclaim for its depiction of trans characters. However, I cannot speak for them, I can only speak for me, and I condemn that this mistake ever happened in the first place. I'm not the right person to dive deep and explain these issues, and I will link in the description to people that are. I stand with trans people all over the globe for trans rights, as they are human rights. Thank you for watching my video. It means the world to me.